So I just finished my flight test for this Eachine Twig, and you can see that I've used quite a number of batteries here to get myself used to this quad. When I first start flying this quad, it was too aggressive for me, so I have to tone down the throttle. So as you can see, it's almost halfway down. So because this is on 3S battery, it flies really aggressive, and especially with bi-blade, and also this is a very lightweight quad. So after probably around 8 to 9 batteries, I got used to this, especially with the throttle curve limited to about 50%. I was able to fly this quite well, as you can see from my sample videos that I'm going to put up. And the other thing that you must note is that this camera is not compatible with rapid fire, so it gets a lot of the line disruption, so interference, if that's what you call it, and it's really unflyable. So instead I got my backup, which is the Trudy receiver, and it flies really well. The other thing that you must note is that it has this annoying telemetry warning that keeps on coming up, so it just keeps on saying telemetry lost. But apart from that, the radio signal is quite strong. It can go up to about 100 meters. So if you look that way, that's where I was flying, and also that other way, all the way up after that obstacles. So it's really about 100 meters that you can fly with this quad. The camera itself is pretty good. There's not too much interference, except for maybe a couple of times, and especially going behind trees, because this is not the immersion RC rapid fire, so the signal reception is not that good. The other thing that you must note is that initially I got the receiver wire tucked away in the quad itself, and it keeps on giving me the radio frequency or radio signal warning, so I took it out and I put it on the arms, and I zip tie it to the arms so that it won't get cut by the blade. The other thing you must also note is that the battery, if it's not big enough, it will keep slipping off. So I just put a rubber band over the battery and strap it down like that. In terms of flying characteristic, this is quite an aggressive quad. I think it's because it's quite light, even with a 3S battery. If you just push it a little bit forward, and the momentum will be quite fast, and you will keep on pushing the quad really fast. So you need to keep watching how much you put your throttle on the quad, otherwise you're going to crash your quad. As I said earlier, with bi-blade propellers, and also with this type of frame, it's usually very aggressive, and just be careful when you fly this. Apart from that, I think this quad is really good if you know how to control this quad. And I think if you want to fly better, and that you're not so worried about the signal dropping off, it's better that you put a separate FrSky receiver on the quad, because the built-in receiver is not as good. and especially with this type of quad, it's very powerful and it will get away from you pretty fast. So all in all, I would recommend this quad, and it's not that expensive. And if you look at my sample videos, I think the high HD recording is pretty good too. And if you look at my setup video, I said that I didn't want to adjust the camera down, but after a while I realized that having the original camera set up at a very steep angle, I couldn't fly it. It was too aggressive for me, so I put it down to about this much. So once I put it down, I was able to control this, and after probably around 8 to 9 batteries, I'm pretty comfortable with this quad. So apart from the aggressiveness and getting used to the quad, I think this is a very well set up quad, except for these exposed wires and exposed electronic board. It's good if you zip tie all these wires down and make sure that you zip tie the power cables to the frame, otherwise there may be potential for damage. Yeah, so like I said earlier, I would recommend this quad. It's not too expensive. It has a baby turtle camera. The only thing you must remember that it's not compatible with immersion RC rectifier. Apart from that, yeah, this is very good. And if you look at my channel, I don't usually review bad quad. I usually pick and choose the quad that I like, especially this one. I think it's really good because it has the HD camera. And with HD camera, the good thing about it is that it can help you when you're reviewing your video footage. You will see that if you don't fly very smoothly, HD recording is very unforgiving. You can see that very clearly, so it will help you to try to fly your quad smoothly and help you train in that way. Apart from that, this is a great quad. I think if you have the funds and you know how to control this, especially control the throttle, so go out and get this one. So just remember, Quadcopter is not rocket science. So after this portion, you're going to see me setting up the quad, the unboxing bit. So if you don't want to go view the video after this, then you can stop viewing it right now and have a look at the sample video and see whether you like them or not. I may not be good in flying, but I think I got this quad pretty well in control, and you will see from the flying footage. So again, quadcopter is not rocket science. See you next time. need to remember and consider, which is the motor wires. They hang freely on the motor arms, so you need to secure them with zip ties. And it's best that you do with zip ties, because if you secure with like a sticky tape or something like that, they will eventually fall off. Zip tie lasts longer. So for the 4 models, you need to secure with zip ties. And you notice that with the middle port, I've put few rubber bands on them because I just want to protect the flight control board and all the electronics and wires in the middle of the board with rubber bands all around, so that when you hit the ground or when you crash, they don't get pulled out. And also I got 2 rubber bands, so that they are enough to cover this section, and then 1 rubber band over the top like that to cover a little bit of the side section here where you have the additional receiver wires, and also the additional wire for the control board for the baby turtle camera. So at the top here, you can see that I also secure the antenna with zip ties. The reason being that if you look at this internal of this antenna, it's connected using, I can't remember the technical names for the connector, but it's the press-on type of connector on the flight control board. So if you don't secure this top part to make it immovable, if you crash or something, it may pull out this connector inside here and without you realizing it. So it's best that you make this immovable at the top, so that any movement of this top part will not cause the connector to be pulled off from the flight control board. So I left the zip ties long in the original length, because sometimes it will help if you crash a craft, and it will add like some kind of a cushion. And also it's easy to identify your craft when it's flying, because if you do it line of sight, then you know that this is the back of your quad. And also in relation to the power cord, you also need to secure it with a zip tie here, because if you don't, any movement of this power cord will potentially pull the wire off the flight control board. So in terms of the camera, I think this angle is just right, because if you look at how it is set up, and if you move forward, you only move a little bit forward and it's already straight ahead, so it won't fly really fast. So I just keep the camera angle that way. And in terms of the props, they are screw down props, which I like, because without screw down props, it will fly off eventually. So all in all, this is a very easy quad physically to set up, and it's also quite well built, and I like the frame. Let's talk about Eachine first. Eachine is very good at building copies of quad, or they take something which has worked from their previous micro quad, and they use them, and they listen to comments on YouTube and other sources. So when it comes to their latest quad, so the only thing that you need to really focus on when you get your quad, and then when you have the instructions, you just need to look at how to bind your quad. So with this quad, you can do it by pressing a button on the flight control board or using Betaflight. My suggestion to you is to use Betaflight. Binding is very easy. All you need to do is connect your quad to Betaflight, and then go to the CLI section. So just type in bind_rxxpi. There's really no need to look at the section where you have the flight control board, except to look at the orientation of the flight control board and all the other electronic board on the quad itself. Other than that, you can just ignore it. And in terms of the flight control board, whether it's a new one or whether it's an old one, and because they always use the latest board, so there won't be any issues in relation to that. So with the binding, if you are familiar with setting up your transmitter, then you don't really have to worry about this part, because if you have the Taranis QS7, you can always copy and paste your old model and then bring it forward and just change the name and you're good to go. And the setup for the mode, all you need to do is just do the arm switch and also the flight mode, and that's all you need. And other modes I don't really use, and I don't think average user use those other flight modes anywhere. And I don't use turtle mode. If this one comes with turtle mode, I don't use it because you put a lot of pressure on the motors when you use turtle mode, and it will burn out your motors if you don't know how to use it properly. And the built-in receiver is FreeSky D8 mode, so you don't need to change that, so you don't need to worry about that part. As for the smart audio, you just need to know how to activate the smart audio, which you also don't need to change the orientation of the props. I know that a lot of people fly props out, but prop sync is more than good enough. And in relation to model stops, always have it on model stop, because if you have it on A mode, when it crashes, then if you don't turn off your quad quickly, it will burn out the motors. So in relation to the PIDs, I don't think you need to change them, because I never change my PIDs. I just fly the quad as it is, and it will fly pretty good without changing any of that. You don't have to update your quad. You must remember that when the quad is built and when it's sent from the factory, it usually has the latest software on the board, which is compatible with the flight control board. So if you change it, it may not be compatible with the flight control board because of the memory restrictions on the flight control board. So it may cause problems for you. So if you're not familiar with changing or updating a quad, don't do it. So in terms of the instructions, all you really need to know is how to bind the quad, and the rest is set up the mode, and that's it, and you're good to go. So there's really no need to know any other thing except for binding and setting up the mode. And also, by the way, I forgot to mention that with the video transmitter, if you have Eachine's quad, it usually comes fixed at a certain channel and frequency, and that's usually the best one that Eachine set it up for, because they have already looked at other quads and they use the best channel that they think it should be set for. So you don't really need to change this unless you fly at a certain frequency and channel. Otherwise, just use your video receiver and then just auto scan it, and then you will get the right channel. So there's really no need to worry about this one. So in summary, in terms of internal setup, you can see the section of this video on internal setup, and you can see that it's very easy. All you need to do is set up your transmitter, bind the quad, set up the mode, And if you want to change the OSD settings on the camera, change that, and then that's it, and then you're good to go.
Telemetry lost. Telemetry recovered. Telemetry lost. Telemetry recovered. Telemetry lost. Telemetry recovered.